This session will be about startup to scale up. In fact, a very, very important and challenging point in the life cycle of any startup company, how to scale up the business. So to take it forward, we have a galaxy of speakers who are the domain experts in this field. I would like to call them on the dais. I'll request Mr. Anil Khaitan, Mr. Anshul Dureja, Professor Vibhu Biswal, Mr. Sandeep Singh, Mr. Nitin Bajaj, Mr. Rahul Garg, Mr. Rana Athia, Mr. Dheeraj Jain, and Mr. Amit Pandey. Kindly come on the dais, please. So to start this session, I would like to invite Mr. Anil Khaitan, Vice President PhD Chamber, to give his introductory remarks on this very, very important and pertinent session, Startup to Scale Up. Sir.
Thank you, Jatinder. Distinguished members on the dais, and as I see the future of India, very good afternoon to you. Startup to scale up. Something like, just give you a small analogy. Mount Everest. You're starting at the base. Now that's a startup. Now what is scale up? Is the peak of the Everest. And that is where the startup operators must not lose the focus of that peak, irrespective of the weather, in hostile conditions. No, we must have those steel in our guts to carry on. As Steve Jobs said, that everybody goes to 97%, but it's that last 3% where people have ventured into. It is that what succeeds. And that is for all of you to understand that startups, if you see, are everything. Today you see even Ford Motor Car Company was a startup. Today see Nestle, the famous Maggie case. Nestle was a startup. There was Mr. and Mrs. Nestle. They started this company in 1866. And how they started? Because their next door neighbor's son had fallen sick and he was not getting well. So they were trying some, wheat and some maida and I don't know all what they were trying, some kind of recipes. And it worked. And now you have Nestle. I don't want to get back into it. So what I mean to say is that when we say startup and stand up, okay, startup, you have a lovely idea, a lovely business model. Assume you get a funder and he's also in place. Now the question comes is standing up, what our Prime Minister said. And what he meant by standing up was that you can only stand up if you scale up. To give you an example, you see the United States of America. A lot of you have been there. Now you order a large pizza, or a medium-sized pizza, or a small pizza. You just see the size. Because America talks in scale. Because today's scale is everything. As you've learned in your school and colleges, economies of scale. And that is what you will achieve in scaling up your startups. Today, Amazon is there. Today, you read in Economic Times, although there could be rumors, that Flipkart is for sale to Amazon. Amazon might buy it. Because, see, startups need a lot of money too. They need a lot of sustainability power. They need vision. Amazon started way back in 90s. And today, Jeff Bezos has already committed, as you know, $2 billion investment into India. So, to conclude, basically, I don't want to take much of your time because you have very knowledgeable speakers here, is that always remember, friends, that once you've jumped in the river, you have, I mean, failure is not your option. And just remember one thing in life, and I think most of you are familiar with Mahabharata and that story of Arjun. Watch out, sir, your step. And that story of Arjun, when he says, I can only see the bird of the eye. So, to conclude, Arjun ka focus, baki sab bogus. Thank you. And friends, I'll have to beg leave from you because today we have our managing committee meeting. So if I can be excused, please. Jatinder, can you monitor the session, please?
Thank you, Mr. Khetan, for your kind words. In fact, the analogy of Mount Everest for the startup to scale up is really, what needs to be learned. Thank you very much. And now, since it's a very, very important session wherein we are talking of the nuances of how to scale up a business, so we have none other than Mr. Anshul Dureja, who is a very dear friend of PhD Chamber. He has been working and doing a lot of events with us. So I'll request Mr. Anshul Dureja to kindly moderate this session and take this session forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think when Dr. Jatinder said Anshul and PhD Chambers are friends, but somehow that doesn't go well between me and Dr. Jatinder. The reason is 2 months back, I was over here, and he immediately put me in the session after lunch, which is the most difficult. So there's a good amount of bonhomie between me and him in terms of the session goes. Let me introduce the panel over here. Of course, they would get a chance over here, but just to introduce on a very, very small piece, I would say, not a scale. Scale is the title of the session we have. They all are great individuals and fantastic entrepreneurs to a hilt. They all are older than me. Don't go on my white hairs, of course. I'm still a kid because we are only 2 years old. That's my entrepreneur journey. But we have people over here who go way back. And then we also have Professor over here who would be talking us through in terms of how he has seen people growing, I would say, under his knowledge, trying to become entrepreneurs and how can a startup could scale up as well. As we move forward, Anil used a fantastic line that Arjun, just picking up from here, the difference between Arjun and Krishan, Arjun is all about efficiency and Krishan was all about effectiveness. The results matter. You have to be Krishan and you have to be Arjun. Startups are efficient, but those startups which are effective would only become and tend to do scale up of their ecosystems. With that, I would like Amit to start and introduce himself, and then we keep on moving ahead as the session flows.
Good afternoon, guys. I understand you guys must be pretty tired up after the lunch and khana kha ke thodi neend to aati hai. But then the idea is to keep this one very energized. The whole team has already caught up. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Amit. I'm from a company named Inc42. We are a tech media startup, and we cover all the growth stage companies over our media platform and do some very exciting party events, which are pretty offbeat to the mainstream startup ecosystem. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I've had around an experience of 8 years from the air conditioning industry, heading a lot of SMEs and MNCs, their sales and marketing teams. And I also had a brief stint in my own startup named Find Your Great Work. That was into, again, startup hiring. We pulled it off pretty well, but couldn't scale up. So I think that should be something that we might highlight about. I'll pass it on to Dheeraj.
Thank you. I'm Dheeraj Jain, partner at Redcliffe Capital. Redcliffe is a hedge fund based out of London, which invests in Indian companies who acquire businesses outside India. under a structured credit or a leveraged buyout structure. So I bring a background of structured financing companies, Indian companies globally. Radcliffe also invests in companies under principal investment fund in Indian companies in various other sector. I've been investing in startups for the last 1.5 years. I've done 16 investments. Unlike most of the VCs says that 4 out of 10, if they're successful, they'll be happy about it. They'll meet their IRR objective. In my case, the portfolio, every single company, very handpicked companies, the teams, the product, the portfolio, and the investor around us. So I'm very, very kind of blessed to have a portfolio which I have today. And thus there's lots of learning, lots of insight about the portfolio which I can share. Most of these companies are in a scale-up mode right now. So we can talk about sectors, teams, product, pricing, marketing, whatever we want to talk about. And before I give mic to my next co-panelist, who's also my portfolio company, by the way. And it's great to be on a panel with a portfolio company where we can share an investor perspective and an entrepreneur perspective together at the same time.
Thank you, Dheeraj. My name is Rana Athaiya. I am a dog lover first, and because I'm a dog lover, I've formed this company called dogspot.in. It started to help people help pet lovers to connect with each other. So we are about content, community, and catalog of products which we sell to pet lovers across India. We are the largest catalog for pet products. I'm one of the largest depository of content as well as largest community for this segment. Yeah, that's about me. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Hi, I'm Rahul. I run a startup called Moglix.com. We are fundamentally looking at how do we bring technology into B2B commerce, which is pretty much a few decades old industry, and technology has not touched the part of commerce there as compared to the B2C world. This is a 1-year-old startup. Prior to this Moglix, I was with Google, which is calls itself the world's largest startup. So I think the session is interesting because we have this new startup, Moglix, and coming from a background which a very, very large scale company calls itself a startup. So I hope I'll add value to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Nitin. I'm the founder of sponsifyme.com, and what we essentially do is we help brand managers identify the opportunities wherein they can do sponsorships and eventually help them engage the consumers directly. So in turn, helping the event managers raise sponsorship and reach out to the brands who are looking to invest in properties.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for being, getting me on this panel. Myself, Sandeep. I've been an internet entrepreneur for the last 10 years in this journey. So my first startup was more of a bootstrap startup called Coesa Media, which was acquired by WPP. So it was a bootstrap company for the 5 years. Then we sold off to WPP. Currently, I'm the founder of Free Culture, which is an apparel brand, and we've raised capital from Sequoia and Runit. So it was initially a bootstrap, but we raised money pretty early on. And we've seen that journey of bootstrapping it, then scaling it up. So still running that company.
Hello, I'm Bibhu Biswal. I'm very different from this group because they are all entrepreneurs, whereas I am a thorough academician. I am primarily from physics. But in 2011, University of Delhi started an innovation center. So I switched sort of my career to build innovation ecosystem in University of Delhi, and in the process, we started a BTech program in which the students are encouraged to do a lot of projects as part of curriculum to solve social problems, do business projects, and in the process become innovators and go towards startup. That was sort of the intention of the BTech program. Subsequently, we established a design innovation center, which helps people to take idea to prototyping, to product. And then we established a technology business incubator, where anybody, any student who has an idea and wants to really go for a startup, we give them funds. So I look after this Design Innovation Center and the Technology Business Incubator. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So after giving the floor to the panel speakers, I would also introduce myself. I am the Chief Enablement Officer and the Chief Love Officer, as I proudly call myself, of Creating Values. We are a management consulting firm, world's second oldest profession on earth. We do a lot of crazy things. We do strategy consulting, which is the most craziest of all. Then we do people consulting, which every company struggles with. And we do technology consulting, which no company understands. So that is the stuff we do. That is the pieces we do. Today, let me start, I would say, by saying that we all have heard about something about business class, first class, economic class. I thank Dr. Jatinder and PhD to make this possible for startup class. So today, the panel over here and all of you resonate and I would say get resembled as the startup class. Most of you are students, as I see. Some of you probably would be angel investors, like on stage Dheeraj itself. Some of you would be entrepreneurs in their own right, and some of you would be the startup, I would say, possible startup entrepreneurs as well. I would just say keep on asking some interactive questions in between. Panel is very, very experienced over here, right from academics to the dirty hand departments over here. Keep on asking, make it lively. So let me go ahead and probably start the session of today. My first question would be to Sandeep, and Sandeep has been in this space since 1999, so it's fairly 17 years old now. And he has founded and he has started, nurtured, and then exited.
Don't try to second guess my age now.
I would ask you, what is the typical challenge which startups generally face while starting up? Scaling up is the second, so probably we would do it in the second part. But how about starting up? Starting up is a challenge. How do you see when you started your journey way back in 1999? What was the ecosystem support like over there? And how it's today? Is it really convenient for us, for people over here to think about starting something? So what are those challenges?
So I think the world has changed a lot since I pretty much started my journey. Today, I think back then nobody even understood the word startup. So it was very difficult to convince my parents. Obviously it was my wife's my in-laws never knew which company I was working for, never knew what the business model was. So I think it was very difficult to convince not even employees, but to your own family and your own friends. And when your friends are joining the Infosys of the world and the SAPs of the world, it is, I think, the first step internally is to have that intent and have that passion to pursue it. To go against the tide. I think that's the biggest mental challenge which everybody has to go through. Once you've crossed that, right, then you've made up your mind that, okay, this is what I am on to, because the journey will not be very easy. And I think if you're not mentally prepared, it is, a lot of lure will come your way in terms of salaries, in terms of packages, in terms of, your peer group doing multiple things. So I think that intent and that mental strength of doing it is the first thing. That once that resolve is there, doors will open. And I think today the doors are much more than what they were in 1999 and then when I started the other company. And luckily for us, the second company which I founded was a services company. So the capital was not a big challenge for us because we had some paying clients on board. And then the next journey, which was Free Culture, you're able to raise capital in a very good environment. The investment cycle also goes cyclical, right? So we were lucky that we were in the cycle where the investment was easily available. There was a credential which the team carried. But I think the first challenge which any startup will face externally is to raise capital or to bootstrap, right? I'm not saying that raising capital first up is the best way to do it. But I think having that first set of capital to even do a prototype, going to angels and going to the ecosystem is the most difficult thing. But today the doors are there. People are acceptable of the ideas, and there's enough bootstrap capital which is available. I think the next big challenge which at least we faced were hiring, right? Which again today is not a big stigma for people to really come and join startups. So I think if you're able to sort these two challenges, capital to bootstrap, which can be given a small bit of capital, which lets you take the idea from ideation to at least prototyping, and then at least prove it. And then second is at least to get the first team in place. And we've seen, at least in my 3 journeys, if the team which sticks around for at least 3-4 years together, the success factor of the startup is much higher rather than the team which breaks away in the first year. So I'm still very good friends with the guys who I did my first startup in 1999. So I think sticking around of the team for the first 2-3 years of the startup journey is very critical.
My next question is to Nitin. Your startup is less than a year old. So what sort of challenges and what sort of struggles you saw while you were starting up?
Yeah, so as you have rightly said that I'm the youngest of all these people who are sitting in the panel in terms of the startup stage life, and a lot of challenges. Even yesterday we had another challenge wherein the credit card department of HDFC Bank raided my house to recover the money that I haven't paid them for last 6 months. So these kind of challenges come